Good evening, good afternoon, a big Boston welcome to Funny Like a Clown podcast. I am your host, Dennis Wirth. It is episode 20 of Funny Like a Clown podcast, April 14th, 2019. We are here to talk about comedian Mitch Hedberg. And as always, Funny Like a Clown podcast is brought to you by G Vegas Buffalo Sauce for the spicy, sweet, savory taste of game time. There is only one G Vegas available at gvegas.webs.com. Check it out, it's some good stuff. But to discuss Mitch Hedberg, we have on probably the biggest comedian Shirley, Massachusetts has ever kicked out. Welcome to the show, Rich McCabe.
Thank you so much. And yeah, I do believe, weighing close to 300 pounds, I am definitely the biggest comedian in Shirley.
You might be the only comedian in Shirley. It's a pretty small town, but how are things going for you over there in Shirley?
Not so bad, not so bad. Staying busy, just doing small town stuff, working, and trying to catch some shows.
Paying your dues. There you go. What makes you like Mitch Hedberg so much?
You know, he was very fresh. He was his style, his deadpan, his persona, everything about him was kind of unique, and he just both myself and my wife absolutely fell in love with the guy as soon as we heard him, and we missed seeing him by one day at Universal Studios. Just by chance, we happened to be down the day after that he performed. Which, that's when we lose somebody and you think about that.
Yeah, at the time it wasn't a big deal. You figure you catch them down the road, right? And when they pass, it's like, that was the opportunity of a lifetime, right?
Exactly.
But, and all this stuff that he's done, and, he was a short but memorable comedy career. And as you mentioned, different sells. That's what, the people, bookers tell you, you don't come in here and talk about, I went to a coffee shop. Everybody's done that. They're looking for something different. You want to make television, you got to do different. But in all this comedy, what's one of your favorite memories of Mitch?
Probably just, there's so many things throughout the week or the month where you run into situations and it automatically brings you to, one of his famous lines. You can be waiting at a restaurant and they call out somebody's name, and automatically me and my wife go to, the Dufresnes.
One of the quotes from his comedy routine answers all questions, right?
Exactly, and it just happens over and over because it's all stuff.
Because you love it. You start throwing quotes at each other, like every situation relates to a quote of his, right?
It is. It's amazing. It really is.
All right, well, he was known for his mostly one-liner jokes mixed with absurd elements. He hit some crazy topics all in one-liners. His comedy on stage earned him a cult following, with audience members often shouting out the punchlines to his jokes before he could even finish them. You're a comedian yourself, have you ever been doing a joke and someone shouted out the punchline on you?
Only when my wife is with me.
Because she knows your routine so well, right? But that's how big of a... It's kind of like Funny Like a Clown podcast. We got a cult following on the internet, and it's growing each week, and it's fun to watch my numbers grow each week, because that means that's approval. More and more people are getting interested, but he had a cult following, which, really idolized the guy, because they're memorizing word for word and finishing his jokes before he can even tell them. And I remember one time I went and saw Jeff Dunham, and someone had requested, a friend of his, that he do Bubba J, his puppet. And he said he hadn't done Bubba J in so long that he had to read off of notes, and he's like, nobody be offended, I just hadn't done them. And he was telling the joke, and the whole audience, must have been 10,000 people, just were finishing his lines for him. And he's like, he said, I had the puppet say, it's pretty bad when the audience knows the lines better than you, but that's the following you get, I guess.
It's funny because in music, that's what you want the audience to do, but in comedy, it's kind of not what you want.
Kind of the opposite direction, right? Let's see. He was from St. Paul, Minnesota. He attended Harding High School, and he admitted that he had little interest in high school and he barely graduated. But did you think being a class clown? Do you think that makes a good comedian? Were you the class clown in high school or no?
I think some of it might develop in school, but I think a lot of people develop comedy as a weapon to use, as a
defense mechanism, like
of being able to deal with social issues, when you're uncomfortable or in a school situation.
Sure.
I was always overweight, so my quick comebacks,
keep you from getting picked on, right?
To try to try to battle some of the criticism I got.
Right, you always got to have a comeback, yeah. Richard
Yeah.
Pryor admitted. Richard Pryor spent time in prison, and he said, how do you keep him from messing with you in prison? You keep him laughing. That's what he did. That was how he made it through prison, You make people laugh, you get out of any situation. But I remember at high school, they just had, I could honestly say half the stuff I learned in high school I'd never use in real life. They like to mess with your head, So if a train's traveling 40 miles an hour towards Minnesota, and you get halfway there at 40 miles an hour, and you turn around and you go all the way to Chicago, and you get there at 1 p.m., what kind of breakfast did you have this morning? What are you talking about? What the hell am I going to use that in real life, But yeah, you had to find the humor, and it was the only way you made it through. You had to laugh about it. But let's see. Mitch Hedberg, he began comedy in Florida, which you mentioned, he honed his skills down there. Then he moved to Seattle, and he began touring. His first appearance on TV came on MTV's Kamikaze. Then in 1996, he got what he called his big break on the David Letterman show. 1997, he was in the Seattle Comedy Competition and the Montreal Comedy Competition in 1998, 2001, and 2004. Now, have you ever done any comedy competitions yourself?
I haven't participated in a comedy competition in a couple years now.
I haven't, because they got the Boston Comedy Festival. It goes on around here, which I've never done, but it's one of the biggest things. But have you ever thought about trying out for it or no?
If it wasn't for the 55, 60 hours a week at work, me being 58 years old,
Yeah.
at 58 years old, the only thing you really want is sleep.
Naps.
So,
Naps and coffee. Those are your big things when you get our age, right? But,
yeah.
I got to be honest. That's the biggest thing I said. If I'm going to do this podcast, I'm going to stick to honesty. And early on in comedy, I did do a few comedy contests, and you learn real quick. They're all fixed, okay? It has nothing to do with how funny you are. It's who you know, how many audience members you can bring. It's got everything to do but how funny you are. I mean, you ever seen that where somebody, less funny than you gets the gig because of who they know rather than how funny they are?
Well, you and I went to a place one night and at a hotel, and we saw they brought out the previous winner. He did his set. And I know both of us were thinking, holy crap, we're funnier
We were funnier than that, but it was who he knew, right? That's what counts, right?
But he had about 10 friends there, so he won.
He won by, he got the loudest applause at the end, but it was because he had friends there. So that's what kept me after that. I was like, I ain't doing contests. They're kind of a way, they are good to get seen, even if you lose, you get seen by bookers, but when you enter a contest, you at least want a fair chance of winning, and it's tough when you don't, but, let's see. Mitch went on in 1998 to appear on Fox TV's That 70s Show. Do you remember on that show?
I do, and I've pulled it up a couple times since then, especially after he passed.
Now, he was in what? He was in a restaurant working as a restaurant manager or something on that show, right?
So, yeah.
But, that was based, he looked like a guy from the 70s, and that was like a perfect show for him to be on, It was fit as his comedy. Let's see, in 1999, he completed an independent film, Los Enchiladas, which he wrote. Did you happen to see that or no?
I haven't been able to find it. I don't know where it lives.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess, because, he's the one who put up the money. It was an independent film, so he wrote it. He put up the money to do it, so it wasn't like it was a mainstream release or something like that, which we're Boston guys, and, Steve Sweeney, who's a comedy legend around these parts, he just put out an independent movie himself, Sweeney Killing Sweeney, and, you'd think Sweeney, he's been in, Back to School, Rodney Dangerfield, Me, Myself, and Irene, but he put out his own film, and I think the only place you can really catch it, he said it's going to be on iTunes, but, as big as he is, when you pay your own money, you're not getting the big release, you got to search for the stuff, but maybe we can find out a copy on eBay someday or something, right?
Yeah, no kidding.
Who knows, but he had 3 comedy CDs, Strategic Grill Locations, Mitch Altogether, and Do You Believe in Gosh. Do you remember any of those CDs?
I do.
What one was your favorite one?
I think, to be honest with you, I think the first one, just because it kind of introduced us to him.
Right, that's the
first
one you heard of him was always your
favorite. Got the ball rolling.
Right. Then once you listened to that one, you had to grab the other 2, right?
The Strategic Grill Location.
Yeah. But Do You Believe in Gosh? That had to be a reference on God. Do you believe in God? Not God, gosh, he put, so always a twist in comedy.
Yeah, that was released actually after he had died.
After he had
So
passed, right? Yeah.
yeah.
But he went on. I mean, after he started to hit it big, he went on to appear on the Letterman show 9 more times. Now, did you catch any of his Letterman appearances?
I didn't. I think I saw his first one and maybe one more, but that's past my bedtime.
Right. Well, what were your impressions of the couple you saw?
I mean, he did awesome. As uncomfortable as he looks, because he always fought stage fright.
Right.
That was a big reason for the sunglasses. It was a big reason for him looking down at the stage in front of him and trying not to make eye contact.
Sure.
So he always looked uncomfortable, and but he was always received well.
Right. Even Bill Russell of the Celtics. I mean, he was one of the biggest basketball stars ever. He said he threw up before each game. He was so nervous. So don't matter how big you are, you still suffer from nerves like anybody, you know.
Yeah.
Even Andrew Dice Clay, I remember when he sold out Madison Square Garden, he said you walk on stage, you forget your lines, you forget your routine, you can't believe you're there, the adrenaline's pumping, it's tough, you know. Even, we do local television, and people don't realize there's restrictions you got to work under, and what you do on a 5-minute spot on TV isn't always as good as you are live, because live you ain't got no restrictions, you're less restrictions, where there's all kinds of rules in comedy. You got to be clean. Where if you work dirty, it's tough to work clean. You got so many minutes where you don't want to go over your time and upset anybody. But what are you gonna do? Let's see. He actually, before he died, he signed a $500,000 contract with Fox to create his own sitcom show. This was when he was really taking off. He was dubbed as the next Jerry Seinfeld by Time magazine. I mean, what do you remember most from his career once he got popular?
I don't see. Every album there was always a lot of fresh stuff. So you just really, he was one of the ones where it's the next time I could possibly see this guy, I'm gonna do whatever it takes. And that just never happened. It just never panned out, and it was very frustrating.
They said that about Howard Stern. They said, why do people tune in to hear him? It's because they want to see what he's going to say next. Well, what about the people who hate him? They tune him in because they want to see what he's going to say next. It's like you can't, when you can't wait to see what somebody says next, it's a heck of a thing. But then tragically in 2005, he was a frequent user of drugs. He died of a cocaine and heroin overdose in a hotel room in Livingston, New Jersey. And strangely enough, before he passed away, he did jokes about drugs. I mean, he was fairly open that he was a drug user. He said, I used to do drugs. I still do, but I used to too. And he was in a Penthouse interview, and the interviewer asked him if you could choose, how you would end your life, what would you choose? He said, I'd get really popular and then overdose, because if I overdose now, I'd be lucky to make the back page. But he had joked about being a user, and that was what. And what was your thoughts on that, losing one of your icons?
It was, for somebody I had never met, it was actually probably the most devastated I've ever felt from a performer, like I say, that I had never actually met.
Right.
I felt like, and both my wife and I have talked about this a bunch of times. Yeah, my wife keeps saying, if there is a heaven, and if we ever see him again, she's gonna kick him in the shin so friggin' hard because we ended up missing out on a hell of a career.
That's a good point, because you can't help but think of what he would have went on to do, and what did we miss out on from the comedy legend? What greatness would he went on for, and we were robbed of that. We were robbed of. But why do you think that? I mean, Belushi, Sam Kinison, Chris Farley. Why do you think drugs is such a rampant thing in the comedy world?
I think success is very difficult to handle for a lot of people, and
sure,
generally there aren't many people that we lose as they're crawling their way up the ladder. It's usually not long after they hit the payday. And
why do you think drugs enters that equation?
Well, everybody has their own way of dealing with the stresses, and you got to remember the people of the company that you're keeping. What's the advice you're getting? What are the people pushing you towards? You know what I mean? What are your outside influences on your inside circle?
Yeah.
And all of those things have a huge impact on,
If you're around a
the
circle that does
decision-making.
drugs, guess what you're gonna do? You're gonna do drugs.
You know,
Yeah.
there's things I did growing up because of the people I hung around with. It
Sure,
was
the
not because
company. You are the
that
company
was
you keep.
me.
Absolutely. But I think you hit it. I think you hit it best earlier too, because I mean, I've had some success in comedy, and I was out at a Hollywood party in Las Vegas recently, and they had the penthouse suite at Planet Hollywood, and I was up there with Sam Kinnison's brother was there, Lark Williams. She's one of the biggest radio DJs out there. There was just Carl LeBove, a huge name in comedy, and and it was like something I dreamed about when I was 20. And I was like, if I was in my 20s, this would be the coolest thing. And it was cool until about 10 o'clock. And then about 10, I thought, a nap would go really good. I mean, I don't mean to sound old, but I mean, in your 20s, you can party all night and do that stuff all night. When you get older, it catches up with you. And I mean, if you got to be on Letterman one night and, Carson the next night, then fly out to New York for a trip, you're tired. You need something to keep you going. And I think a lot of them turn to drugs to keep them going, when you hit the success later in life.
Yeah, you either need to try to keep yourself in top physical condition, physically and mentally, or you can go the other route and look for crutches to get it done.
Right. Because, I mean, even locally, I mean, we do comedy shows locally, and a lot of nights I get excited about going, but there's been some nights where I've been sitting here relaxing, and it's like, I'd rather just sit here and rest than go to the show. I mean, you got to go because you're committed, and once I get there, I'm happy, but has there ever been a night where you're like, man, I'd rather just sit home and rest than go do this?
It does happen. There's been a lot of things that I've committed to, and like you say, as it gets close between work and your spouse and projects, and and it's like, oh God, this is
It's
but
a
like
rigorous
say,
schedule.
Once you're there, it's like it's over. You're
Yeah, it's all worth it then, but
what keeps you going. But
to get there is the tough part, and unfortunately, just on the local scene, we see it. I mean, I'm sure once you hit the success that Mitch Hedberg had, I mean, his schedule just been insane, and in order to keep up with it, you can't miss out on the Tonight Show with Johnny Carson or whatever, or the Letterman show that he was on, and you need something to keep you going. I guess drugs keep you going. I don't know. All right, you ready for some fan questions?
I'm sorry?
Are you ready for some fan questions?
I guess so, yeah.
All right, let's see what the fans had to say. Larry Soares writes in, rice is great if you're really hungry and want to eat 2,000 or something. Do you remember that line?
I do.
But some of those are some of one of his great one-liners.
It's a good look into his head.
What's one of your favorite lines of all time that he used?
I guess probably the one that I bring up most often is the fact that you can't be blocking a fire exit if you're flammable and you have legs. To me, that's a classic.
Yeah, and that's like stuff you wouldn't think of, but I mean, it's everyday stuff where he put his own twist on it, and that's what made him original, right?
Yep.
All right, Karen Connell writes in, inside of a bottle of Windex must be really clean. Do you remember that quote from him?
I had not, for some reason, I didn't remember that until I was kind of doing my homework a couple days ago, and I read it, and once again, that's just a perfect look into his
and that
world.
shows you how quick his jokes are, inside of a bottle of Windex must be really clean. Do you know how many one-liners you must have to write in order to fill like a half-hour, 45-minute set?
Oh, God, yeah, I can't even imagine.
It's so much longer than telling a story. I mean, a story, that can eat up some time, but one-liners, they're so quick, you got to come up with a bunch of them to fill time, but, Wild Bill Comedian writes in, people always say I sound like him. Anybody ever compared you to another comic on stage or after you get off and told you sound like someone, or no?
Oh, God, I wish.
You ever been compared to anyone?
I haven't had that honor yet.
No? All right, well, who knows? I mean, I do a routine, the child support superhero. I got people chasing me down after shows to tell me the child support stories, so I can relate to that a little bit on that, but, he was... Now, I have a question, because I thought I remembered... Because sometimes you'd see Mitch come out on stage, and he'd, like, sit down, and he'd tell half of his jokes sitting down. And I heard that part of that was because he had some issues with his eyes, where he had trouble seeing. So he sat down on the stage, because he said he couldn't see where he was going. But I tried to find some information on him having eye disease, and I could find nothing. I mean, is that anything you heard of, or...?
The only thing I had ever heard was... He wore extremely dark glasses to try to minimize the amount of eye contact he would make, so that he could stay focused and concentrate on what he was trying to do on stage.
Okay, so I don't know if it's fact or fiction, if somebody can find some information, but I thought I had heard that somewhere. But that's a good point, because I mean, I work with a young comedian, and he asked me for advice afterwards, you know, every time he does a set, and I told him once, he's up there and he's looking directly at the floor telling jokes, and I'm like, you know, you're not going to get a response from the floor. If you want a response from your audience, you need to be talking to them, not the floor. And his father said, I've told you about your confidence before. He said, yeah, that's my confidence. I got to work on it. But confidence is a big part of telling jokes. It's not just being funny, right?
Yeah, people want to feel you. People want to know that you're seeing them, and and you got to talk to them.
Sure. Because, I mean, what? Stage presence and delivery, they say, you know, telling jokes. I mean, because I know one comic, I won't say his name, he writes at a professional level, killer comic, but he needs to work on his stage presence and delivery quite a bit. Once he does that, he could go on to do big things.
Yep. It's hard having the whole package.
It is. That's why you got to keep practicing and practicing. And you get out of practice, it's almost like starting over. Because, I mean, you get into like a groove if you do so many shows so close to each other. And then if you go through a cold spell and don't do them, you lose your groove. It's like you got to get that edge back and start really pounding the pavement again.
Oh, if you can get 3 or 4 shows a month going for a month or two, it makes a huge difference.
Oh, yeah.
Huge difference.
Practice makes perfect. All right, you ready for some trivia?
Alrighty.
All right, well, I'll preface this by saying nobody does good on trivia, so if you don't do good, you're fitting right with everybody else. Most people go 0 for 3. A few people have gotten 1 right. A couple of people have gotten 2 right. No one has ever gotten 3 right. So whoever gets 3 right, I got to get a prize. Yeah. You know what? Whoever gets 3 right, they're going to get a free bottle of G Vegas Buffalo sauce available at gvegas.webs.com. So there's a tribute to our sponsor right there. So whoever, if anybody goes from this episode out, so you ready? Buffalo sauce? You like buffalo sauce, Rich?
Anything that makes me sweat, I'm into.
All right, there you go. You can win a bottle right now. Let's start it out. All right. How old was Mitch Hedberg when he overdosed?
Oh God, 37.
37. Bam! You're 1 for 1. Look out! I set myself up. I'm giving away some free buffalo sauce. All right. So you've already met the bar. You're 1 for 3. All right. You ready for the second one?
Sure.
All right. Let's do it. What popular Comedy Central show did Mitch do the voice of a puppet on?
Oh, son of a bitch.
Dun 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 dun.
Oh man, I don't know that.
It's on the tip of your tongue. Crank Yankers. It was Crank Yankers. The old. They did like Jerky Boy phone calls with puppets. And he led the voice for one of the puppets and did a few crank phone calls. And they had big names. Sarah Silverman, Dave Chappelle. They all did that show. That was Jimmy Kimmel's show, actually. Him and Adam Carolla did it before Jimmy hit big and he got his own late night show. He did Crank Yankers.
There goes the buffalo sauce.
There you go. See that? But you've met the bar because you're 1 for 3. So this one, this third one, I guess I'll put you in the category of above the rest or you're with the rest. You ready?
Sure.
All right. Finish this popular Mitch Hedberg one-liner. An escalator cannot break. And what's the punchline?
It can only become stairs.
Boom! You are 2 for 3. You almost won the buffalo sauce. You had me sweating over here. I'm about to mail out some buffalo sauce, but 2 for 3. You did better than most. But what are your parting words about Mitch Hedberg? What do you want the fans to know? I mean, as you as a fan, what do you want other fans to know about him?
There's a website, and it's mitchhedberg.net, and it's maintained, and there are some things that have been updated. It's a good collection of his stuff. It's a good collection of a lot of his writings. So if you want to get into the world of Mitch Hedberg, it's definitely a trip well worth taking. But I guess, the biggest lesson is everybody is different, and everybody sees the world in a different way. And, you got to try to find the humor in it all. And, but more important than anything, you got to keep your feet on the ground and stay safe,
Sure. I agree. You got to laugh at life. It's the only way you're going to make it through it if you laugh at it. If you don't laugh at it, it's going to drive you crazy because life's all about loss.
Yep.
All right, so you on the local scene. I mean, if people wanted to check you out, Rich McCabe, local comedian out of Shirley, Massachusetts. I mean, you got some big shows coming up, but what do you got planned, or where can people check you out?
Well, unfortunately, last night was almost basically usually one of the biggest shows of the year that I do. I generally don't play for 3, 4, 500 people, but last night we had about 350. But that was a fundraiser for Easter Seals, and
How'd you do?
I always look forward to that one. I opened. They gave me 10 minutes, and it went pretty well. So
Yeah. Hey,
I can go back to work.
So you got 300 people, even if you got 100 laughing, you're still doing. All you need is 1/3 of the crowd, and you sound like you're crushing it, right?
Oh, the bigger the better. The bigger the better.
But you're on Facebook too, so if people want to check you out, they can go to Facebook and usually post where you're going to be, right?
Yeah, and I got a couple videos on YouTube. The quality's a little shaky, but when you're trying to do your best stuff, the video sucks, and when your stuff isn't so good, the video is awesome.
Yeah, well, when you're not recording, that's when you knock it out of the park. When you try to record, you can't get no luck, right? All right.
Exactly.
Comedian Rich McCabe on comedian Mitch Hedberg. Rich McCabe on Mitch Hedberg. I'm getting tongue twisters here. All right, thank you for being on Funny Like a Clown podcast, and I wish you well in your comedy career, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right, we'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye-bye.
All right, Rich McCabe right there. Mitch Hedberg, man, he had a funny outlook on life, and everybody's getting an outlook on life, but everybody, can't make it funny, and certainly that's a good point. He knew how to laugh at life. He knew how to laugh at different situations in life, and when you can laugh at life, it makes it a whole lot easier to bear it because, man, tough things happen in life, and instead of letting them drive you crazy, just laugh about it. I mean, like I said, I do the comedy routine, the child support superhero, because I was going through a divorce and it was killing me, and my son was getting caught in the middle and it was killing me. And I said, you know what? I could do something we're all going to regret, or I can say this is so ridiculous, I'm going to just laugh about it. I chose to laugh about it, and I catch some shit for laughing about it, but that's the angle I took, and I'll stick by it because laughter is the best medicine. Until next episode, keep laughing, baby. We'll see you then. Good night.